All right. Hello, everybody. Hope everything's going good for you. Before we get started here really quickly, I do want to let you know I am recording this session so I can upload it to the YouTube channel. I think there'll be a lot of information that I'll be giving you today that will help you get through this second to last assignment that we're going to have for the semester. So, like always, this is an open forum. Please interject, ask questions if you have any as we go
Hey,
along.
got a question.
Yes.
So we're going from like assignment, I can't remember, it was like 12 or 13 to
Yeah, we're going
assignment.
from 12 to 16, basically, if I remember correctly.
Okay, I was just making sure.
Yeah, so just based off of everything, I just decided let's just do what's the most important. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to be doing 16 and 17, and then we'll have a final exam. So that's what we can expect.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so just so you know, I am trying to utilize D2L as much as possible as far as putting the source documents that you'll need. I'm not neglecting Bluebeam Studio. As far as today's source documents, I have not yet got them uploaded to Bluebeam. So if you're trying to use Bluebeam, you might need to wait just a couple of hours after this class before I get everything complete. I also have one more contract I need to complete and get uploaded for you guys to be able to do the next assignment. However, I don't believe you need that contract until you get to part 2, so there should be plenty of time. So I just wanted to show you here really quickly. I did add some folders here under content in D2L. So I've got a prime contract now loaded in there. I've got subcontracts loaded in there. I've got change orders, which are for the prime contract, which is to the owner basically. And I believe the rest were already in there. So most of these folders do have documents or source documents that you'll need to refer to be able to complete this next assignment. So just be aware of that. And again, I will get everything uploaded into Bluebeam as well. Okay, having said that, we are going to talk about how to generate change orders today. So before I jump into the AIA software, because I'd like to do is actually demonstrate how to use the software. And then just like we did with the contracts or the subcontracts, I've got a worksheet that is available to you guys that you will actually complete the next assignment. Just a little forewarning on the next assignment. It is one digital file I give you, but you end up having to generate a total of 10 subcontractor change orders. So there will be actually 10 documents that will be turned in this next assignment. So just be aware that it's not a 5-minute thing and you're done. It's a little bit of work to get those things done. Okay, so before I jump into the AIA software, I want to just show you really quickly 2 change orders. So those change orders, what we're looking at here, this is change order number 1, which is changing the prime contract. So the AIA has changed a few things in this latest version of the 2017. Prior to this, you could do subcontractor change orders using this form, but it wasn't really any different. They would basically line out some of the owner information and they would delete one of the signatures. And it was a little bit, I don't know if I'd call it sketchy, but on the newer version, what I'll show you here in a second, instead of saying AIA document G701, it'll say G701S, S meaning it is a subcontract change order. Other than that, the change order itself does not change. So just really quickly looking at the change order, you can see we have the document name, the iteration in terms of the year that we're using, the document title, we have our project with the project information, owner information, architect information, contract information, and then we have specific change order information. So change orders based on the contract they are changing, and I want to emphasize that, and I'll keep coming back to this because we have a sequence. Our change orders are numbered sequentially based off of each contract. So in this case, since we're looking at the prime contract between the general contractor and the owner, we would have change order number 1, and then we have change order number 2, and then we just keep going on up. When we start looking at the different subcontracts that we have, we will do the same thing. If, for example, I'm going to show you floor coverings today, is going to be my example I'm going to be using, and we'll do 2 change orders, or I've got 1 change order done, and then we'll do a second change order. And what happens with that contract, I will number those actually 001. I like to use a 3-digit method in subcontracts and prime contracts. I like to use just a single digit or 2 digits, just nothing prefacing, as would the 001, 002, so on and so forth. But that being said, I'll show you how to do, well, I've already done the 001 for US floors, and then we'll do a second change order, which will be 002. But then if I were to go back and create a different subcontract change order, let's say to Strom Electric, which is one that you'll be doing, then I would start over in my sequencing or my numbering system. So that's a separate contract. So again, I would start with 001, 002, so on and so forth. That was one question that was always asked, at least when I was coming out of school and whatnot. Well, if you got multiple subcontractors, shouldn't you just, or don't you just keep numbering 1, 2, 3, 4? No, you have a sequence for each contract, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. So that's essentially the preamble information here. The contract is changed as follows. Remember, we have a contract, and there's a clause in our contract that gives us the method that we're able to modify the contract. That modification, once again, will be scope of work, contract price, or contract time. Any or all and any combination can be part of a change order. So as we get down here, the contract will be changed as follows. We usually want to list some type of description on what's being changed. So in this case right here, and this will be this is building off of part 1 of what you guys will be working on in assignment number 16, is add alternate number 1, lower level finishes to contract. So just a little bit of background information on this. If you guys recall, we had alternates as part of this project, and the scenario that we were playing out is, as we entered the contract with the owner, from our bid proposal, the owner did not accept that alternate number 1, and so it never became part of that prime contract. Now what's happening is, down the road here a little bit, the owners actually changed their mind and said, no, we actually want to go ahead and accept that alternate number 1, which will provide for the lower level finishes. But we've already entered into a contract, so the only way we can add that scope back into the prime contract is going to be via a change order. So that's what we're seeing here in change order number 1. Okay, and then if you guys recall, let's see, it was Thursday when I gave you the lecture on changes in claims. This one change order that changes the prime contract will actually facilitate potentially, I want to say it's about 10 or 12 subcontractor change orders, even though we'll only be doing 3 of those 10 or 12 that would need to be done in a change order like this. Okay, so this portion right here, I want to go through this really quickly. This is very important. This is what you guys will be required to calculate. Just fair warning, on the final exam, I give you basically this portion of a change order and some information. You guys are required to make sure you understand how to do the calculations. It's pretty straightforward, but it is best to, you know, practice a little bit. And I think by the time we're doing this, because you'll manually be doing the practicing in the worksheets that I'll provide to you today, you'll do pretty good. So as we come along here, the original contract sum was, and you put in the contract sum. Okay, so this is for the prime contract. So the original contract amount per the prime contract was $3.125 million. Now on every change order, that original contract amount is the same. When you have a subcontractor change order, it will be the original subcontract amount, and that number will never change. The next line item on here is the net change by previously authorized change orders. So this line does not address the changes, the dollar amount that's going to be affected in this change order. It wants to take a summation of all other changes prior to this, and we're going to put that in here in this line item. Change order number 1 never has anything but 0 in that second line. As we move to change order number 2, 3, 4, and 5, then what we'll note is that that information becomes, or we transfer that information in here from the previous change order. So the third line item, the contract sum prior to this change order was, this is simply adding line 1 and 2 together, so we don't change since we have no previous change orders. Next line, the contract sum will be increased by this change order in the amount of, and we plug in the amount that change order will be. So $250,000 is the change order amount. And then our final line here is the new contract sum will be this amount right here, $3,375,000. Okay, so that's the simple way of how those lines interact with each other. Okay, so we've talked about scope. We changed scope. We've changed now price. The last thing in the change order we need to look at here is the contract time. So in this case right here, we've got the contract time will be increased by 14 days. The new date of substantial completion will be, and then you list the new substantial completion date. So the new substantial completion date for the entire project will now be December 17th of 2020. And then the last thing here is we do need signatures. And so the architect would sign, the contractor would sign, and then the owner would sign in an owner change order, or change order to the owner that changes the prime contract. So that's the basis of what the AIA G701 looks like. Now let me go back here to the subcontractor change order. So I've created one here already for our subcontractor that's doing our floor coverings, which is US Floor. So just take a quick note right here under our document name here. This is the G701S. Okay, so that is what's new to the 2017 version. And then just like we've done before, we have the project information, we have the contractor information, but this time, instead of owner information, we have our subcontractor information. You'll notice up here our contract for. My standard in typically doing this, and I actually was thinking about this morning when I was working on those other contracts. I worked off of a different variation of contracts with one of the contractors I worked for. And we actually, on those contracts, had a place for a contract number and a contract description. When we had that type of version, when we did a change order, the contract description would really be what we had put right here. So So this is essentially what the subcontract description is. The subcontract was generated on February 3rd. And then you can see right here, this is where I like to use the number 001 representing a subcontractor change order. And then the date that the subcontract is being generated. Again, coming down here, you'll notice right here that under my description, this description is identical to what is in the owner change order. I could probably have gone more specifics here. Maybe put here that this is just directly related to the floor coverings. But again, I've made this statement before that what I really like to do is try to be very consistent and cohesive in the terms that I'm using. So if I come back here to the owner change order, where my description was add alternate number 1 lower level finishes to contract, you can see right here as I come back to the subcontractor, looks like I wasn't perfect here. I don't have to contract, but you can see that the alternate 1 lower level finishes, that is very specific. That's a specific term, alternate number 1 lower level finishes, that can be identified in the project manual as well on the bid form. And so there should never be any question what this actually does represent. Okay, so going off of that, you can see right here that we have our contract sum of $55,000, no previous change orders, again, because this is change order number 1. That never does exist. And then we have our subcontract sum. Prior to that, we add those two together. This is our subcontract amount that we're increasing, and now this is our new amount. You'll notice right here our subcontract here is unchanged, and on the subcontract, the substantial completion, the way we write the subcontract, I just left that blank for this point. Again, as we come down here, we have the subcontractor name, a place for their signature, and their printed name and title. Same thing for the general contractor. Okay, so that's what the subcontract looks like in comparison, or the subcontractor change order looks like in comparison to the prime contract change order. So having done that, let me come back here now to the AIA contract documents. So you can see right here, I've already created a bunch of new documents, and it does organize them based on the series and the document types that are in here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to create a new document. And in that creation of the new document, I'm going to come down and I'm going to find the G701 right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And this will generate, it may take 1 second. Let's just, let me just pause here for 1 second and see what's going to happen here, because that should be generating. Okay, I'm going to try that again here. I'm not quite sure what's going on. There we go. Okay, so you'll notice on this dialog box, the G701 is between the contractor and owner, the subcontractor, and contractor. We're going to go ahead and select subcontractor. Now this is also very important, because one of the really nice things that we can do is we can import data from previous documents. We want to do that because what's going to end up happening is we are going to want to bring information from that first change order into this new change order. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. You'll notice there's a drop down list here. I can select from a list. I don't have any other documents in there, so I'm limited to what I can choose there, but that's okay. So I'm going to, from here, go ahead and say okay. And then the next thing is I need to know which subcontractor I'm going to change the change order from. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that and say okay. And then this will take a minute or two, and it will actually build the draft document. And just like we saw when we did the subcontracts, it's been a couple of weeks ago, this will be generated in Microsoft Word, and then we'll be able to input whatever appropriate information is needed.
If there is a scroll down where you input the other forms, will it auto-fill the change orders that you have previously done, the amounts of those?
Yes, it will, and I'm going to show you exactly what happens here. So as soon as this opens up here, and it looks like it did open up, but it's on my other screen, so let me see if I can get it over here. Okay, so this is the draft form that you're looking at. And so in this case right here, what you'll notice, I think that was you, McCade, that asked that question, right?
Yes, sir.
So as you can see right here, the net change by previously authorized change orders, you'll notice that that 15,000, that was what was in this row on the previous. It has been brought up to this row. Okay, if we were to go ahead and create a change order number 3, then when we opened that other one by linking to this document, it would, I actually didn't say that right, but basically what would happen is it would take the 15,000, it would add what's up in here, and it would put that into the next change order. So in other words, when you're doing this manually, when you're on the second change order, when you go to fill in row number 2, on the previous change order, you add row number 2 and row number 4. It's the sum of those two, which is what's brought into the succeeding change order. And that's exactly what the software is doing for me here. And then you'll notice it brings in all the other information, and it's change order 002. So let's just say in this case, we're going to be doing this one on March the 20th. And so I'm just going to go ahead and put that information in there. And give me 1 second here. I'm not sure that I actually have that file. Well, I do have the file open. Haven't introduced this to you yet, but this is actually the assignment sheet that's posted on D2L. And what I was looking for is going into change order number 2. I had a deductive change order of $2,500, and so I needed to grab that. So what I'm going to actually do in this case, you'll notice over here, I can click on here, and I actually have the option of saying the contract sum will be increased, decreased, or unchanged. So in this case, based on my scenario, I'm actually decreasing it. I believe in that second change order to the owner, we are essentially losing some floor coverings, and so we've got a decrease here. I just want to double check here because I never remember for sure, but I'm going to put in 2,500, and then I got to click out. And yeah, so I don't put this in as a negative. as long as you describe this as decreased. When we used to do this in the paper versions, we didn't have the idea, the option of doing, it didn't say increase, decrease. We basically put this right here as either a positive or a negative integer, and then the math happens. So as long as that says decreased, that's an absolute value that goes into this cell, and then you can see 70,000 minus our 2,500 gives us a new contract amount of $67,500. Okay, so let's just go through the math here really quick, because you guys will be doing this manually. I kind of forget this. It's the nice thing about having automated things like this. The formulas are built in there. So the 55,000 plus our 15 gives us a contract amount that is 70,000. The new change order amount is a deductive 2,500 and gives us a new contract amount then of $67,500. Okay, so once we get that all done, you would always come in here and you would put the date that you signed that. I typically would not type that. I would just hand write that, just depending on whoever signed it. Oftentimes also you'll notice in here that we have TJ Hansen, Tyler, that is the project manager. So maybe some of you guys, I don't know if you've been out on internships, if you've been exposed at all to doing any of this type of stuff, but if you have, as a project intern, you're probably not going to be the signatory on that change order. You might actually prep them for your project manager, and then you would give them that document to him to review, sign, and then go out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I'm actually, after that, I'm going to go ahead and just close out. So my document here has been created. One of the things I'm growing accustomed to, and it's just the nuance of how this software works, I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to change this name to, I like to give it the name of the subcontractor and then the change order number. So I'm going to change that really quickly there. And then the last thing I need to do, I need to actually be consistent here. And then to create a final, because that's in draft version. So to create a final, I'm just going to highlight the subcontractor variation right here. And then in my right-hand column here, I'm going to hit generate final. We want a written signature. And we'll see how fast that processes. But as soon as that's processed, then it'll generate a final that will look exactly like what we were looking at right here. Okay, so that would be the outcome of that change order. Okay, I'll just let that generate for a little bit. Let me go back here to D2L really quickly. I just wanted to show you that if you go under assignments, and I'll read through this with you here in just one second, because my goal here is to go through one of these with you now. So you'll notice right here, I do now have assignment 16 change orders. And so that is now available to you. And then also, I'm not a real big fan in some ways of D2L, but let me go to this window here. So if you come under course documents also, you will see a new form here. It's a PDF form that's AIA G701S. You will need to download that and save it to your computer or to a personal saving device. And what I recommend you guys to do is, that finally finished and opened up, so you can see how that all works out. When you guys open up this new worksheet, this is what it'll look like. So instead of the software generating everything, I'm going to make you guys do this manually. Now, let me just give you a quick suggestion. First off, download this and save this as your template copy. And once you have that downloaded, saved as a template copy, what I would do is come in here and type in all of the project information. Type in all the contractor information. And then once you have that done, save that, and that will be your template. And then go ahead, and what you're going to do is do a save as, and save this document to the name of your first change order. Okay. Use some type of variation where, if you come back to my document here, it just basically says the G701S, and then maybe just put the actual contractor's name and change order number. And so go ahead and do that. In fact, what I would end up doing is I would just go ahead and get that change order number 1 done for that contractor, and then save it as that change order number 1, and make sure it's a unique file. And then as you go for month after month, because you will have to do some change orders 2 and 3s on several subcontractors, when you go to change order number 2, just go ahead and open up change order number 1, do a save as, and then just modify whatever information you can. Otherwise, you'll end up having to repeat putting a bunch of this other information in. Okay, all this other information can be found, most of it on the source documents that I provided for you guys today. So you'll just go through here and fill that information in. You'll notice right here, you'll have to hand type whether it's increased, decreased, or unchanged, and then the amount of time. And I don't think I've had you guys really change any time on any of the subcontracts. So I would just leave things unchanged in that regard. Okay, so that's the form you'll be working off of. And again, as I was stating earlier, you'll end up having a total of 10 of these when the assignment's completely done. So let me come back over here to the assignment. Let me just read through it with you. So what I've tried to set up here is 3 separate change orders, which we do have the change orders to the owner that have already been done and executed. And so what we have to do is we have to go in and make the necessary contract adjustments to each of the subcontractors that are part of, or that we've subcontracted on this contract. Okay, so I've given you a little bit of background information. I think I've pretty much covered that in what I've talked about so far, so I'm not going to rehash that. So we're going to come down here to where it says Part 1 under Instructions. And I just want to go through and just read and just explain what's going to happen here. So again, we're going to do 3 different change orders. And if you really get down to the basic mechanics of each of these change orders, the change orders were generated off of 3 different types of conditions. So the first one was basically just a change order where you know, I didn't use the term as a request for proposal, but basically we already had a proposal amount in the original bid that this is what alternate 1 is. And we agreed after talking to our subcontractors that we were able to do that alternate number 1 for the same price, meaning all those subcontractors and suppliers were honoring the original contract amount. So we're basically just doing a change order based off of that proposal. The second month's change orders is going to be based off of 3 separate constructive change directives that were given to us during the next month. And then the final month, we are having a change order that's processed based off of a list of claims, which I introduced to you guys as logging them in and calling them potential change orders that were approved. And we have got that change order from those PCOs that have now come back to us. So those are the three scenarios, and those change orders happen over the course of 3 separate months. In fact, I believe most of these we're saying we receive back from the general, or excuse me, from the architect on February the 10th, March the 10th, and April the 10th. There might be some deviation in there, but it will be listed in our document here. So let's just talk really quickly about part one. On January 29th, 2020, LEM Architects informs your office that they've decided to now do alternate one, the lower level finishes. Because I've already explained this to you. So since we've already executed the prime contract on, that's a typo. That should be January 13th. Little dyslexic there. We now have to change the scope of work. And so basically on February the 10th, we get this change order number 1 back from the architect, and our next task after that as the project engineer who represents you guys, you need to go through and generate the subcontractor change order so it can be presented to the PM. He can review it, sign it, and send that out. Now I'll go through here in just a second because there's all kinds of different subcontract changes that can happen. I'm only requiring you guys to do subcontract changes to the listed subcontractors. Really quickly, let me go back to D2L. That is where these subcontracts will become important. You'll notice in here, I've got the subcontracts in here for Strom Electric, for US Floors, for Mallory, and for Poised Plumbing. I need to also get GV Concrete in there. That's the one subcontract that's not listed. So you'll be able to go into each of these contracts and get the relevant information for what's needed. That includes the date that the subcontract was issued, as well as what the subcontract amount was for. Okay, so once you have all that information, I've provided to you on the next page a breakdown of alternate number 1. So here's our total of the $250,000, which is the amount that we provided to the owner. Here's a breakdown: $45,000 in cabinets. Coming back down here, anyway, you can go through and see all that. So when it comes to things like plumbing, you'll just use that. That'll be where you get the plumbing amount. That'll be the electrical amount. And who was the other? Oh, the painting was the other. So there's the painting and staining. There's the other change order amount. So the reality is, though, as you look at this breakdown, we have a separate contract with someone providing the cabinetry. Same thing, probably a PO for or a material contract for your hollow metal and wood doors. We have a contract for, I got 2 contracts to upload because we got high wall, drywall that needs to be part of this assignment. So I've got 2 contracts I owe you guys. But anyway, you could see every one of these items could potentially be a contract adjustment or a subcontractor change order for each of those subcontracts. So anytime you have a change order to the prime contract, the potential of having to create or develop and issue multiple subcontractor change orders is fairly large. So you get the idea there. There's our subtotal. And then we've got, I've got some general and liability insurances we add in there. I added additional costs for the payment performance bond. I'm in there at 6% OH&P. And then I did this quite often with change orders. I do not like to nickel and dime things. When you start dealing with $250,000, you know, I don't deal with cents. You know, maybe you make an argument that $223 is lost money based on $14,000 profit. It's pretty negligent in my sense. And so in that regard, what I'm doing is just making that rounded down. But anyway, so that gives you a breakdown of where those items go. So again, you'll be doing 3 subcontractor change orders for these 3 subcontractors. And again, the subcontracts for all of them, these 3 are up and loaded right now. I still need to do high wall, drywall. I take that back. I still need to get high wall drywall in there. And then I also need to get GV concrete. So I'll get those done here fairly quick. So so the context when you're doing these 3 subcontracts are that you're doing this on February the 10th of 2020. So don't go through here and try to do all the subcontracts at the same time, because you got to picture yourself on that date, and all the change orders that we're going to do that are in the future don't exist at that point. So just focus on what's in part of part 1 and get those 3 subcontractor change orders complete. Once that's done, we're going to go to part 2, and part 2 is going to be where we are going to take 4 separate constructive change directives, CCDs, that were issued to us, and that we finalized the price, and now we're actually going to get the change order done. So this information gives you when the CCD was issued to us, and the dates and all that stuff. And then after that, you'll see right here, again, just like that alternate, I've given you a breakdown of what each of the dollar amounts would be, corresponding with like your plumbing and with your toilet, let's see, your floor coverings was the example that I did, your drywall and metal studs. So anyway, that's CCD number 1. Here's CCD number 2. And that goes all the way down through CCD number 4. So in this particular one, you've got 4 subcontractor change orders you're going to need to complete. One's going to be for GV concrete, high wall drywall, Mallory plumbing, and Poisden plumbing. Really quickly here, you guys can just bear with me for 1 second. I want to open up owner change order number 2. Again, you guys have access to these documents, and I just wanted to show you how in change order number 2, how this document is looking, where I have each of the CCDs listed here for each of those amounts. And anyway, you guys get the idea there. The way those CCDs are listed may be how you want to list those on each of the subcontractor change orders. Where I was going with that, and I'm just going to look here really quickly. So CCD number 1, what I was looking for is if any of these subcontractors had scopes of work that was part of different CCDs, then in their own change order, I would list the prices individually, just like I was showing you. Whoops. Right here, that I would just list it at CCD number 1 and then the subcontract change amounts, and I would just basically list it just like that. So that's a breakdown for all of those items. And then once again, as if it's March 20th, you will generate 4 subcontractor change orders for each of those subcontractors. Again, because you will have already done some subcontractor change orders. And the next month, each of those would be, like GV Concrete would be change order 001, Mallory, or let's see, Poised Plumbing. I'm already forgetting. Now let's just go. Yeah, it is Mallory Painting. So Mallory Painting would be change order 002, and you just keep those sequences going. Okay, and then we finally get to part 3, and this will be the scenario where, based on some of the specific PCOs, I've given you some background information on there, and from that, we can derive what several of those costs are. And at that point, these are the 3 subcontractors that you'll be creating, again, change orders for. And then this will give you a breakdown for each of those. Now, I broke these down specifically here. I broke those down specifically here because when you do the subcontractor change, you do not give them back this other stuff that's within there. So in other words, like the GC overhead and profit, which was built into the line item amount and all those different things, we're going to simply just give the $1,200 to the respective subcontractor, and then the insurance, the surety bonds, the GC overhead and profit. You don't want to add that into there, because if you're to do the subcontractor change order, for example, for PCO number 1, and you were to give them the 1343, you're giving them back the general contractor's overhead and profit, and that's what you don't want to do. So that's more or less what the PCOs are all about. So you'll end up going through and doing all that. Okay, this did not get cleared out of here, so don't let this confuse you. Remember, I used to have access for you guys for the AIA contract documents, and so we were to use that. And it looks like I did not get that deleted out of there. So just ignore, I think, everything there under help. So that's the essence of what you're going to be going and doing in assignment number 16. So our format from here on out is going to be on Tuesday of next week, I will have a question answer session to help you guys get through the rest of this. On Thursday of next week, excuse me, I think I said that wrong. It's Tuesday today, correct? So Thursday, I'll have a Q&A. Next Tuesday, I will do a lecture on payment applications. And then that following Thursday, I'll give you your last assignment that we'll be working on for the remainder of the time we have this semester. Okay, so give me a couple of hours to finish getting the last 2 contracts done and uploaded. And I think, other than I had the one typo in here, I may go back and delete that last little bit, that help part, and fix that and upload this part. But don't let that stop you if I don't get that done. But I'll get the 2 contracts uploaded to D2L. And then again, like I was explaining before, you'll need to be in here using the things like the prime contract, subcontracts, a major thing, change orders to the owner. Those are the source documents that you'll need to be able to fill out this worksheet. So again, when it's all said and done, you'll have a total of 10 documents that you will be submitting as part of this assignment. Okay, so there's my explanation, somewhat of my demonstration. can I entertain or answer any specific questions from any of you? Okay, if not, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop recording.